This is a day in which we commit ourselves to a way of being and a way of connecting with the people in our lives that can be of significance, that allows us to find the energy that is drawn from these holidays. The many holidays of the month of Tishrei are formative for appreciation of some of the central ideas of the Jewish people. The humanity of us as one humanity, the responsibility of the Jewish people to pray and be concerned for not only ourselves as a people, but for all of humanity. The sense of the importance of compassion in the life of our community and in the life of each and every one of us. Throughout the service, we will encounter many prayers that beg God for compassion. And the question, of course, is as we ask God for compassion, are we as individuals and as people who have often been angry, especially during this period of complex enclosure, have we been able to offer compassion and to give our open heart to the people who are in our lives? The day of Rosh Hashanah dawns with many questions, and it will receive many answers. The doctrines of our people are quite open to the fact that we reflect each and every one of us in our lives, the responsibility to be compassionate and to be the people that are the wheels of the chariot that bring God's message and God's compassion into the world. The service today will be marked by the sounding of the shofar. I'm going to hold up one of the shofarot. It is an instrument ancient in its vintage. It represents a call to improvement. We seek not to become perfect human beings. We acknowledge that that is impossible. But we seek, each and every one of us, to find what in Hebrew on the report cards of children is called shipur, the same root, shin pei resh, shipur nikar, a marked improvement. That's the goal for us this year. May we find a marked improvement, not only in our lives with our ethical behavior, but with our spiritual connections to the divine. The shofar will be sounded approximately 100 times. I'm actually going to appoint my friend Fred Marcus to be the person to count and let us know if we diminish or not. We are pleased that you are here, and we're going to begin our service in a moment with Ma Tovu. I have just wanted to wait a few minutes because we had a little bit of a confusion about the starting time. Some people are joining us at 10:30, and some of us are joining us at 10. So we are compromising a bit, but it's now time to begin and to welcome you to the electronic tent of meeting, the Matovu, which in biblical times marked the arrival of the notion of coming to the peaceful sanctuary of Jewish life on this Rosh Hashanah 5782. going to invite our cantor to chant Matovu.
Thank you, Rabbi. As we bring up the PowerPoint here, hopefully all of you can see. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Vani berov chastecha avovetecha eshtachaveh el hechal kodecha b'yiratecha Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahavti me'on betecha umekom mishkan kvodecha v'ani eshtachaveh berov chastecha aneni be'emet ishecha Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chastecha aneni be'emet ishecha Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael.
Thank you, Cantor, for setting the tone for our services this morning. We turn to the prayer that is often the one that marks the spirituality of many of us in the mornings. Judaism invites us to a regime of positive expression. And we recite what we call blessings. Brachot, bracha is the singular. These are blessings that help us to be aware of who we are as a people, who we are as individuals, some of the most basic things that we sometimes take for granted. But now I invite you, if you're able to rise, and join with us as the cantor and I recite the blessings. I will recite them in English. The cantor will begin in Hebrew.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lesech vivina lehavchin ben yom uvein laila.
Blessed is the eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who has implanted mind and instinct within every living being.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir sheina me'enai utnuma me'afapai.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who removes sleep from our eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who opens the eyes of the blind.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim.
Blessed is the eternal our God, whose power lifts up the fallen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten layev koach.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who gives strength to the weary.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who makes firm each person's steps.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who provides clothes for the naked.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who made me to be free.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who brings freedom to the captive.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who has made me a Jew.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvora.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who girds our people, Israel, with strength.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael batifara.
Blessed is the eternal our God, who crowns Israel with glory. We turn now to the English as part of our morning orientation to prayer. We turn to the early morning prayers. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed is the eternal God, creator of the universe, who has made our bodies with wisdom, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs in a finely balanced system. Wondrous fashioner and sustainer of life, source of our health and our strength, we give you thanks and praise.
Amen. And at the middle of page 87, we start this in a beautiful, sweet melody, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorat hi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorat hi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorat hi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. We continue at the middle of that prayer. Kol zamam shehanshama bikirbi, modani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai ve'Elohei avotai, Ribon kol hama'asim adom, kol hanshamot. Baruch atah Adonai, asher beyado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol basar ish.
After acknowledging the importance of the soul, something that has often been lost in the discussion of psychological aspects of our life. We turn to acknowledging and blessing the possibility of learning, and we acknowledge that learning by focusing first on the fate of being a Jew, the possibility of our connection to Jewish life. Ashreinu matov chelkenu, as the cantor intones.
Ashreinu matov chelkenu, Uma na'im goralenu, Uma yafa Yerushatenu. How greatly we are blessed, how good is our portion, how pleasant our lot, how beautiful our heritage. And we continue on. Go ahead, Rabbi, please.
We turn immediately to reciting the blessing for the study of Torah, which is found at the bottom of the page. Another one of the blessings that mark our existence as Jewish people.
Gefen mi Mitzrayim ha'ela Eloheinu, Vayigaresh goyim vayita, mayim misanai hishkaota, venozlim mechorev. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah.
You're muted, Haim.
I'd like to invite Richard Hecht to join us, if he would share with us this wonderful Mishnah that is in front of us, which is one of the important teachings of the Torah. Richard, are you there? Okay. No, he's not. So let me turn to Donna Cantor, if you would please. Donna, if you would read for us at the top of the page, the Mishnah in English.
These are obligations without measure. Their fruit we eat now, their essence remains for us in the life to come. To honor father and mother, to perform acts of love and kindness, to attend the house of study daily, to welcome the stranger, to visit the sick, to rejoice with bride and groom, to console the bereaved, to pray with sincerity, to make peace where there is strife. But the study of Torah is equal to them all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We continue with another praise of Torah. Eternal God, make the words of your Torah sweet to us and to the house of Israel. Ha'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha ubefinu befi amcha Beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tze'etzainu v'tze'etzei amcha Beit Yisrael hulanu yodei shamecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Blessed are you, the Eternal One, teacher of Torah to Israel. We continue now with the prayer on Baruch She'abar, chanted by our cantor.
Baruch Shemar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu, Baruch Oseh v'reshit, Baruch Omer v'oseh, Baruch Ozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sacher tov lirehav, Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch Shemo, Bishvachot v'izmerot negedelka, u'nshabechecha u'nfa'ercha, ונזכיר שמך ונמליך, מלכנו אלוהינו יחידך האלוהים, מלך משובח ומפואר עדי עד, שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל בתשבחות.
One of the spiritual practices of Judaism is the recitation of the Psalms. There are 150 of them. I love to tell the story of how, when my daughter was very little, I promised her a reward if she would learn by heart a psalm a week. And this was shortly before she entered the Jewish day school that we had helped to found. And it went well, and then she went to class, and she came back after having, I think we had accomplished getting her to memorize the first 15 Psalms. And she came back with the following report. Abba, nobody else has to memorize the Psalms. I'm not doing it anymore. Nevertheless, fast forward several years, we were in Israel and she had to learn Hebrew grammar, which she had not picked up in the day school that she went to, but she could read Hebrew and her Hebrew was pretty good. And she had a teacher who was able to teach her the Psalms simply by the fact that she knew the forms, was able to teach her grammar because she had learned the forms from the Psalms. So I recommend especially Psalm 150, which we're about to hear. It's a great psalm for two purposes: learning a little Hebrew grammar, and two, calming one's nerves if you ever get into a car again and find yourself in a traffic jam. Cantor, please.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah bekodsho, hallelujah birkia uzo, hallelujah bigurotav, hallelujah kerov good Lord, hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel vechinor, hallelujah, betov umachol, hallelujah, biminim ve'ugav, hallelujah, 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 betzilzele shama, hallelujah, betzilzele trua, kol hanshema tehallelya, כל הנשמה תהלל יה.
Thank you, Cantor. Wonderful to have the strong laugh track that is the Cantor, who even laughs at the rabbi's jokes. And we appreciate that very much. Thank you. I thought we'd take just a moment before we begin the next part of our service, as we're anticipating a few more people to join us, to welcome people again to our service. And in a sense, this is an opportunity to see friends that we maybe didn't get a chance to see because of the summer and the imperfect opening after the end of the supposed the end of the COVID. So if you're comfortable and you're wearing clothes, please not only unmic, but also let us see you. If you're not, just we'll be happy with you maybe unmiking. And want to give a shout out to Sandra Shapiro. And, welcome. Say hi to Florence Keller and the family. There's Shana, Mazel Tov on recent marriage, and let's see, Nina, welcome. Welcome back, I should say. Allison, welcome to our service. Jane Helfman, welcome again to our service. A little later on, we're going to hear from Gila Nissan, who is going to share with us the special trope, the special notes that are part of the Iranian reading of the Persian reading, I should say, of the Torah. We're very much appreciative of that. And want to welcome Fred Marcus, who I'm privileged to study with on many Friday mornings, and is a longtime friend. And of course, we have the stalwarts of our congregation, Joel and Sue Nevins, chairman, or president, I should say. Chairman sounds a little bit Soviet. Karen Goodman and Alan Hyman, who Alan and Karen have been living together for a long time. I think they're married. And then Donna Cantor, welcome to our services. I think that's everybody that's with us so far. Has anybody been left out? So we continue with the next part of our service. And we will stop from time to time to allow people to ask questions. We realize that this format is the best format for us, given the challenges of COVID. We're appreciative of your participation and your patience. And we turn now to the prayer Nishmat Kol Chai. May our souls bless all that is living.
נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו, ברוח כל בשר תפאר, ותרומם זכרך מלכנו תמיד, מן העולם ועד העולם אתה אל, אין לנו מלך אלא אתה. אלוהי הראשונים והאחרונים, אלוה כל בריות, אדון כל תולדות, המהולל ברוב התשבחות, המנהג עולמו בחסד ובריאותיו ברחמים, ואדוני לא ינום ולא יישן, האומר ישנים, והמקיץ נרדמים, והמשיח אילמים, והמתיר אסורים, וסומק נפלו, והמתיר אסורים, והסומק נופלים, והזוקף כפופים, לך לבדך אנחנו מודים.
Thank you. In a formal way, the Rosh Hashanah service begins with this moment, with a prayer that asks each of us to stand metaphorically before the throne as we acknowledge the sovereign and formally come before God, seeking God's compassion.
האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך. המלך היושב על כיסרם ונישא. שוכן הד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב לנו צדיקים באדוני, לשרים נבא תהילה. בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסדים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמחלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל, ברינה יתפאר שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות, אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים.
I invite you to listen to the words of the Chesi Kaddish, which have a special melody for this time of year of Rosh Hashanah.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה בעלמה, דברה חירותי ימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, והימרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה, ויתהלל שמי לקודשה, בריחו. לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, והימרו amen.
We rise as we join together in the ancient prayer that brought Jewish worshipers in Jerusalem and in every congregation the words of the Baruch Hu together as one, with hearts joined as one, the Baruch Hu as the cantor leads us.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach olam va'ed.
Praise the Eternal, to whom our praise is due. Praise be the Eternal, to whom our praise is due, now and forever. We continue with the prayers on page 99 that celebrate creation. Blessed is the grace that crowns the sky with stars and keeps the planets on their ways. The law that turns our night to day and fills the eye with light. The love that keeps us whole and day by day sustains us. Praise be the power that brings renewal to the soul, the vital song that makes creation dance. Blessed is the murmuring dark, blessed is the light to the eyes, the fall of dusk, the flow of dawn, the turn of noon. We'll give thanks for life's renewal, the radiant return of the sun. Blessed is the power of creation. Praise be the light.
Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha ve'al morei hor she'asita yifaruch hasela Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot.
We turn to the second prayer in the triad of the Shema that leads us to declare the power of love as expressed by the divine having given us a Torah, a teaching. That's what the word Torah means. It comes from the same word as parent and teacher. Torah is the teaching that we have guarded and passed on through our people, and it's celebrated in this prayer as we express God's great love for having brought us to this wonderful teaching.
Ava rabba avtanu Adonai Eloheinu chemla gedola v'terach hamalta aleinu Avinu malkeinu ba'avur avotenu Shabbatchu v'cha Avinu malkeinu V'tamlem didem chukayim Kentachanenu lamdenu Avinu ha'av harachaman Harachim rachem aleinu V'tein belibein lehavin ulhaski lishmoa Lilmod ulelamed lishmor velasot ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. והארננו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במשפטך. ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך. ולא נבוש לעולם ועד. אלוהו נבוש לעולם ועד כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובאנו וחרת וקרבתנו לשמחה הגדול סלע באמת, להדות לך ולידך לאהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה.
We join together as we rise for the words of the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto לעולם ועד.
Hear, O Israel,
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
we read together in English. Unfortunately, because of the nature of Zoom, we can't hear all your voices, but please join me as we read the Shema in English. You shall love your eternal God with all your mind, with all your strength, with all your being. Set these words which I command you this day upon your heart. Teach them faithfully to your children. Speak of them in your home and on your way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be a symbol for your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Be mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. So shall you consecrate yourselves to your God. I am your eternal God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. I am your eternal God. We worship the power that unites all the universe into one great harmony. The oneness, however, is not yet. We see imperfection, disorder, and evil all about us. But before our eyes, a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. These two we have known in some measure. There is evil enough to break the heart, enough good to exalt the soul. Our people have experienced untold suffering and wondrous redemption. We await a redemption more lasting and more splendid than any of the past. We introduce the prayers of the first act of redemption that is historically remembered in the crossing of the Red Sea, which is celebrated with the song that the cantor will lead, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who was like you, Eternal One, among the gods that are worshipped.
רם ונישא גדול ונורא, משפיל גאים ומגביה שפלים, מוציא אסירים ופודה ענבים, ועוז דלים ועונה לעמו, בית שבם אליו. תהילות לאל עליון, ברוך ומבורך, משה ובני ישראל, לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. שירה חדשה שבחוג העולים לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו והמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma ba'ezrat Yisrael, Uvteich Mecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go Aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
Thank you, Cantor. We're in just a few minutes going to begin the Amidah, and I thought we'd pause for a moment and invite people if they're. I know always when we have a long service and it's of this nature, people may have a question about what we're doing. I'm going to just give a brief explanation, maybe as people are formulating their questions of what is coming in our service. What's coming is what we call the Amidah, the standing prayer. And at the center of this prayer that's coming is the prayer that we know as the Unatan Tokef. It is the prayer that most poetically and most powerfully expresses the theology of this day, the possibility that we, of course, can have a great bit of say over our future. And we do that by aligning ourselves through acts of prayer, through acts of righteousness, by acting charitably and offering to be a part of all that is needed to make this world a world that is a compassionate world, and by acknowledging that the world is not fated. And we do that by what we call teshuvah, this idea that if we're going in one direction and it is not the right direction, whether it be personally or morally or ethically, that we have the responsibility and the possibility of turning around and being involved in teshuvah. Those are the central ideas of the Amidah. We will, of course, be reading the Torah portion of the Binding of Isaac and its accompanying prophetic reading called the Haftorah, which tells of the birth of Samuel, a mother seeking to give birth and being accused of being drunk because she's praying so intensely for that birth. And we will, of course, sound the shofar, three different sections of the service. So I'm wondering if there's people looking for explanation of some aspect of the service so far. Karen.
I have a question based on observations of more Orthodox services, and I believe it's in the Amidah and other prayers as well, where you take 3 steps in to the prayer, and then when the prayer is finished, you take 3 steps back. Is there anything you can tell me about that?
Well, I think it's like many things. It is an opportunity for us to bring our body symbolically closer to the divine. The divine is, of course, everywhere. But by doing that, we sort of create a sense of intimacy. It's like talking to your spouse from across the room or coming a little closer. So we create that intimate space symbolically. Thank you for the question. So we're about to begin with the Amidah, and it'll be on our screens. And welcome all of you to join in and rise as we begin the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, ve'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el HaGador, HaGibor, v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, ve'Koneh HaKol, ve'Zocher Asdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei v'nehem, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Invite you to read the meditation that introduces the Unitat Tokef, the central prayer that we are about to recite. Invite you to appreciate both the legend and the powerful message for each one of us. It's customary, if you're able to stand through the Amidah, or if not, you can be seated. Cantor in tones, and we will respond in English.
ונתן תוקף קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא ואיום. ובוא תינשא מלכותך, וייכון בחסד כיסאך, ותשב עליו באמת. אמת, כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח, ויודע ועד, וכותב וחותם וסופר ומונה, ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו יקרא וחותן יד. כל אדם בו.
Let us proclaim the sacred power of this day. It is awesome and full of dread. For on this day your dominion is exalted, your throne established in steadfast love. There in truth you reign, in truth you are judge and arbiter, counsel and witness. You write and you seal, you record and recount. You remember deeds long forgotten. You open the book of our days, and what is written there proclaims itself, for it bears the signature of each human being.
ובשופר גדול ייתקע, וקול דממה דקה יישמע, ומלאכים יחפזון, וחיל אורדה יוחזון, ויאמרו הנה יום הדין, לבכול עצמם מרום בדין, כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין, וכל באי עולם יעברון לפניך כבני מארון. כבקרת רועה עדרו, מעביר צאנו תחת שבטו, כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה, ותפקוד נפש כל חי, ותחתו קצבה לכל בריה, ותכתוב את גזר דינם.
The great shofar is sounded, the still small voice is heard. The angels, gripped by fear and trembling, declare in awe, this is the day of judgment, for even the hosts of heaven are judged. For all who dwell on earth stand arrayed before you. As the shepherd seeks out the flock and makes the sheep pass under the staff, so do you muster and number and consider every soul, seeing the bounds of every creature's life and decreeing its destiny.
בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. כמה יעברון וכמה יברעון, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי וקיצו ומי לא וקיצו, מי ואש ומבמים. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברב ומי בצמא, מי ברעש ומי במגפה, מי בחניקה ומי בסקילה. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי ינוח ומי ינוח, מי ישקיט ומי יטורף, מי ישלב ומי יתייסר, מי יעני ומי יעשיר, מי יושפל ומי ירום, ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעברין את רוע הגזרה.
On Rosh Hashanah it is written, now Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass on? How many shall come to be? Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall see ripe age and who shall not? Who shall perish by fire and who by water? Who by sword and who by beast? Who by hunger and who by thirst? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who shall be secure and who shall be driven? Who shall be tranquil and who shall be troubled? Who shall be poor and who shall be rich? Who shall be humbled and who exalted? But repentance, prayer, and charity temper judgment's severe decree. I pointed to the last section of the prayer that we just said, but repentance, prayer, and charity actually should be translated as tzedakah, the same word in Arabic and in Hebrew. Righteousness, charity, they're difficult words to translate into English. But these three ways of being in life offer us integrity. It does not offer us a guarantee against the vicissitudes of life. It does not offer us a get out of trouble-free pass, but it does remind us that with all that threatens life, a life lived with those three dynamics in our life, teshuvah, prayer, and tzedakah, we have the possibility of integrity. Prayer of the Unatan Tokath continues on the next page.
כי כשמך כן תהילתך, קשה לכעוס ונוח לרצות, כי לא תחפוץ במות המת, כי אם בשובו מדרכו וחיה, ועד יום מותו תחכה לו. אם ישוב מיד תקבלו אמת, אמת, כי אתה הוא יוצרם, ויודע יצרם, כי הם בשר ואדם.
This is your glory. You are slow to anger, ready to forgive. It is not the death of sinners you seek, but that they should turn from their ways and live. Till the last day you wait for them, welcoming them as soon as they turn to you. You have created us and know what we are. We are but flesh and blood.
אדם יסודו מעפר וסופו לעפר, בנפשו יביא לחמו, משול כחרס הנשבר, כחצי יבש וכצי נובל, כצל עובר וחננן קלה, וכרוח נושבת, וכבח פורח, וכחלום יהוב, ואתה הוא מלך אל חי וקיים.
Our origin is but dust, and dust is our end. Each of us is a shattered urn, grass that must wither, a flower that will fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, a particle of dust floating on the wind, a dream soon forgotten. But you are the sovereign and the everlasting God. We continue with the prayers of the Kedusha, the prayers sanctifying this day and this holiday.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמחדשים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם. אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושת הנחדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד. I think you are muted, Rabbi.
Thank you. Last night I spoke about the three Uvachen prayers. In past years, I've actually spent quite a bit of time telling about the debate in the Talmudic yeshivot. The prayer that we just recited, the Unatan Tokef, was one of the prayers that was to be recited on this day of Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. And the debate was to include that prayer that we just recited, or the three prayers that we're about to recite. As you can imagine, the debate went back and forth, different ideological perspectives of that. And as it happens often in committee work, they ended up including both of them. So we have both the Unatan Tokev that we recited and the three prayers that are coming up. But one of the things that's interesting is that there is a decided difference in tone and perspective. If you will, the Unatan Tokev prayer that we just recited is profoundly personal, I would say even frightening, sobering, demanding of us in terms of taking seriously the fragility of our humanity and the fragility of the other person's humanity. These prayers that we're about to recite are decidedly political. They hope for a time when Jews, and interestingly enough, not only Jews, but all humanity, will know a world of justice and freedom. And the debate between the rabbinic forces on both sides that decided which prayer to say, and then at the end decided to put both in, is a fascinating discussion. For years, I've been lobbying that we need to have a summer devoted to preparing to understand that debate. I lobby again for that, but I want us to hear the forward-looking prayers, which are formulated as a kind of a legal conclusion. The words uvachen in a legal document in the Middle East means these are the conclusions we want you to hold on to after you've considered everything else. And there are three of them that we begin with today. They mark our looking forward into the future. Eternal God, cause all your works to stand in awe before you, and all that you have made to tremble at your presence. Let all that lives revere you, and all creation turn to you in worship. Let them all become a single family doing your will with a perfect heart. For well we know, eternal God, that yours is the majesty, yours is the might, and awesome is your name in all creation.
And at the top of the next page. Uvechein ten kavod Adonai le'amecha, tehila yirecha, v'tikva l'doshecha, ufitchon peh, lam yachalim lach, simcha le'atzecha, v'sason le'irecha, simcha le'atzecha, v'sason le'irecha, Utzmit chat keren lechoyer shvei tevel.
And the third uvachen, and therefore the just shall see and exult, the upright be glad, and the faithful sing for joy. Violence shall rage no more, and evil shall vanish like smoke. The rule of tyranny shall pass away from the earth, and you alone shall have dominion over all your world, as it is written.
Yimloch Adonai leolam, Elochai yiktzion, ledor vador, Hallelujah. Kadosh ata v'nora shemecha, ve'en Eloha mibaladecha, kakatuv. Ve'yigbar Adonai tzevot b'mishpat, va'el hakadosh nikdash b'tztecha, Baruch atah Adonai, HaMelech HaKadosh.
The God of all being is exalted by justice. The holy God is sanctified by righteousness. We praise you, O God. You reign in holiness. We turn now to the prayer for the holiness of this day. Atavachartanu.
אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו בריצית בנו, ורומתנו מכל הלשונות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, ושמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה, יום תרועה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים.
We continue with the concluding prayers of the Amidah on page 115, the prayer Ritzeh.
ריצי אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני שהותך לבדך ביראה נעבוד.
Modim anachnu lach. We gratefully acknowledge, eternal God, you are our creator and preserver, the rock of our life and our protecting shield. Continue on the next page. We continue with the Birkat Kohanim, the traditional priestly benediction.
אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, ברכנו בברכה המשולשת התוכבה בתורה.
Our God and God of all generations, bless us with the threefold blessed benediction of the Torah.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May God bless you and keep you. Can you do it?
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה.
May the light of God's presence shine upon you and be gracious to you. Can you do that?
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
Our tradition, as a matter of format and aspiration, concludes this section of the Amidah with the prayer for peace. And we have a video of the prayer Sim Shalom. May peace be in our midst.
שים שלום, טובה וברכה בעולם, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברכנו אבינו, ברכנו אבינו, כולנו כאחד כאחד, באור באור פניך. כי באור פניך Netata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torah Chaim v'avat chesed u'tzedakah u'veracha verachamim v'chaim v'shalom v'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol het ובכל שעה בשלומך, בספר חיים ברכה, בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום, ופרנסה טובה. ניזכר ניכתב לפניך. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים, לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
We take a moment for meditation and thank the cantor for that beautiful slideshow. I recognize some of the people in the last slideshow. They're actually not on screen, but they're actually people holding our Torah. I remember those moments and I celebrate them. May we soon celebrate them in person. We, of course, acknowledge the prayer of peace that concludes the Amidah that was just sung, and the words in the book of life and blessing, peace and prosperity. May we and all your people, the house of Israel, and all of humanity be inscribed for a good and peaceful life. Praised are you, eternal God, source of peace. And now we'll take a moment to allow for people to have their own private thoughts.
עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל shalom shalom bimramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen ve'al kol Yisrael
Thank you, Cantor. Indeed, I call everybody's attention to the beautiful remark that's in the chat. That was so beautiful, Cantor. Thank you.
Thank you.
We turn now to our Torah service, and we have in front of us the picture of our ark, which is safely in storage until we can come together. And we have the Torah at Andy's home studio, and we begin with the chanting of the Torah blessings.
Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kamasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshalcha v'chol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
We're going to, at this time, we recite the prayer that introduces the Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, 100 generations have stood as we do before the symbolically open ark. That they found in themselves little merit testifies to their humility. That they repeated and amended their ways, they fell only to rise again as they climbed toward the light. Strong was the faith of those who stood here before us, while we are of a generation that sought to dethrone you. Many have said to the works of their hands, you are our gods. Strange then to see the emptiness in those who cast you out. Strange to see the agonies of our time grow more numerous and more intense, the more our worship centers on ourselves. Strange that men and women grow smaller without you, smaller without the faith that you are with them. We pray for that this day, which restores your people, may help us come close to you, the living God, the God of life. For you are with us whenever we seek your presence. You are absent only when we shut you out, only when full of ourselves. We leave no room, for you are within our hearts. We call you Avinu. As a loving parent, forgive our sins and failings and teach us as we reach for you. We call you Malkeinu. As a wise ruler, teach us to add our strength to your love, that we may fulfill our destiny and redeem this world. To this vision, to this possibility, to this task, we offer ourselves. We rise for the Avinu Malkeinu prayer, which will be recited in English, then in Hebrew.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shma Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned against you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our children.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu Va'al Olalenu V'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness, war, and famine.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale dever v'cherev v'ra'av me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to all oppression.
Avinu Malkeinu kale al kol tsar mastin aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu chotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the new year be a good year for us.
Avinu Malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, fill our hands with blessing.
Avinu Malkeinu malei yadenu birchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu ve'anenu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu ve'anenu, ki ein banu masi. Seimanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Seimanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Seimanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Seimanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu ve'anenu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu ve'anenu, ki en banu masim.
We recite the 13 attributes of God as we are led to take the Torah out of the ark, found at the top of the page we're looking at.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanon, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, Nosei Avon v'Fesha v'Chata'a v'Nakeh. O house of Jacob, come. Let us walk by the light of Adonai.
Please rise.
Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kdushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nocha Shemo. Lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagivura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'havod. Ki chol bashamayim uvaretz, ki chol bashamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'hamidnaseh lechol lerosh. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu, l'hakodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
This morning, we're going to invite Gila Nissan to read the Torah portion in the special trope that was developed by the Persian community. Beautiful story that Gila once told me of how she was given the opportunity to learn this trope. And it's a special honor for us to be hearing it. We wanted to make it a much more active by actually having her read it to us, even though it's from a tikkun, a special book that allows her to read directly. Last year we tried it from a video. We think that hearing her voice in real time is better. We're going to invite Alan Haim to recite the first Aliyah. And Alan, if you'd share with us your Hebrew name.
Avram.
Avram, and your father's name?
Alfred.
Alfred. And your mother's name?
Lily.
Lily. And did they have Hebrew names?
Yes, but I do not know what they were.
We'll go with what we have. Ya'amod Avram ben Alfred the Lily. Invite you to recite the bracha.
Oh, I see. Baruch es Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai Hamborah Li'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamborah Li'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Baha Banu Mikol Ha'amim. Notein lanu et Torato. Baruch Ato Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Amen. ויהי אחר הדברים האלה, והאלוהים נישא את אברהם, ויאמר אליו אברהם, ויאמר הנני, ויאמר קח נא את בנך, את יחידך, אשר אהבת, את יצחק, ולך לך אל ארץ המוריה, ועלהו שם לעולם, על אחד הערים, אשר אומר אליך. וישכם אברהם בבוקר, ויחבוש את חמורו, ויקח את שני נעריו איתו, ואת יצחק בנו, ויבקע עצי עולה, ויקם וילך אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים.
That concludes the first Aliyah. Alan, if you would recite the bracha as we turn the
Turning the page.
here it is. The bottom is the.
Thank you. Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Natan Lanu Torah Hamet, V'Hayei Olam Nata B'Chochenu. Baruch Ato Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to now turn to the second Aliyah. And for the second Aliyah, I'd like to symbolically call all members of our congregation to recite the bracha together with me, who have experienced the loss of a loved one, or who have experienced the the danger of the virus, who have experienced a health emergency. May we recite this bracha as part of our ability to embrace life in the coming year and to acknowledge that we are present for the opening of this new year. Please join me. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch ata Adonai, noten ha'torah.
אמן. ביום השלישי, וישא אברהם את עיניו, וירא את המקום מרחוק, ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו, שבו לכם פה עם החמור, ואני והנער נלכה עד כה, ונשתחווה ונשובה אליכם. ויקח אברהם את עצי העולה, וישם על יצחק בנו, ויקח בידו את האש ואת המאכלת, וילכו שניהם יחדיו. ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אביו, ויאמר אבי, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים, והיה השה לעולם. ויאמר אברהם אלוהים, יראה לו השה לעולה בני, וילכו שניהם יחדיו. ויבואו אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים, ויבן שם אברהם את המזבח, ויערוך את העצים, ויעקוד את יצחק בנו, וישם אותו על המזבח ממעל העצים, וישלח אברהם את ידו, ויקח את המאכלת לשחוט את בנו, ויקרא אליו מלאך אדוני מן השמיים, ויאמר אברהם, אברהם, ויאמר הנני, ויאמר אל תשלח ידך אל הנער, ואל תעש לו מאומה, כי אתה ידעתי, כי ירא אלוהים אתה, ולא חסכת את בנך את יחידך ממני. וישא אברהם את עיניו וירא, והנה איל אחר נאחז בסבך בקרניו, וילך אברהם ויקח את האיל, ויעלהו לעולה תחת בנו, ויקרא אברהם את שם המקום ההוא, אדוני יראה, אשר יאמר היום בהר אדוני יראה. ויקרא מלאך אדוני את אברהם שנית מן השמיים, ויאמר בי נשבעתי נאום אדוני, כי יען אשר עשית את הדבר הזה, ולא חסכת את בנך את יחידך, כי ברך אברכך והרבה הרבה את זרעך ככוכבי השמיים, וכחול אשר על שפת הים, וירש זרעך את שער אויביו, ויתברכו בזרעך כל גויי הארץ, עקב אשר שמעת בקולי. וישב אברהם אל נעריו, ויקומו וילכו יחדיו אל באר שבע, וישב אברהם בבאר שבע.
Let's join together in the second bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, notein Torah. Amen. We must acknowledge that Gila, in a sense, provides a certain commentary by the notes in what the Torah portion suggests. And I thought, Gila, maybe you'd spend a moment telling us something about what it's meant to you to learn this trope, just briefly, and what it's meant to be the transmitter of this tradition.
First of all, I would like to thank and memorize the name and the memory of Rachmiel Shaddai, that was the only person, not a cantor, that was willing to teach me the Persian tropes for that. No other official Persian rabbi, cantor, was willing to teach a woman to read that. And second of all, while I was reading it, what came to me very emotionally is all the sacrifices that and the suffering that we are suffering. And I really hoped that that they will not be in vain, that they will really be for our self-development and the development of our soul. And some of the suffering perhaps are not that necessary in the way that I suffer them. Some of them are necessary for my self-development. I hope for this coming year that I will be more focused on what really needs change, and I will be able to offer to the divine all that doesn't serve me anymore.
Thank you, Gila. That's a great deal that you've said in this. Thank you so much. We're now going to listen to the Haftorah. The Haftorah does not mean half Torah. It is actually the word in Hebrew that means a completing message alongside of the Torah reading. This is from the prophets, from the first chapter of the First Samuel, and we're going to turn to having the blessing chanted by the cantor, and we'll first, before we do the Haftorah, do a Mishaberach. Thank you very much. A blessing for all those who took the opportunity to participate in the first Aliyah, and especially in the second Aliyah, as a way of joining together. And if you have people that you would like to add their names, please add them in the chat, and I'll call out their names in just a moment. The Mishaberach is our opportunity to give a particular name to anyone in our family that is ailing, and we invite you to add names now. Cantor, as you begin to recite the prayer.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Laimotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu bekor habrecha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So we remember at this time those of our friends who are ailing, Jean Bravaya, Elaine Crespi, Karen Grossman, Joyce Powers, Lois Froch, Rebecca Olkowski, Gadi Alon, Ahmed Yechia, Nina Weissman, Jane Helfman, Anat Lahat, Dr. Carey, Susan Joyce, Rachel Furman, Jane and Isabella Broger, Annabella, Dahlia Nissan, Akiko, Pat Sachs, Diane Varkov, Edith Balanoff, Randy Taylor, from Randy Taylor, Karen Harris, Ruth Weil, David Varner, Jerry Hyman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Michael Hyman, Raphael Ortase, Mishaber Chavatenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. May the one that blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bless and heal all of our loved ones. May their healing be a product of the work of medical knowledge, of spiritual support, of the intense prayers that are offered, and acts of charity of friends. May all these combine to create a moment of healing for them. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
And now we're going to turn to the Haftorah. This is the continuation of the story in many ways of the Akedah. And in some ways, it's the antithesis of the story of the Akedah. And so we'll have some opportunity to reflect upon that. It is the custom in the synagogue to read from the 5 books, the first 5 books of the Torah. And this story that we read earlier is from the book of Genesis. We'll talk about that in a little while. And the reading is normally paired with another part of the Bible, another part of the Tanakh. And it's from the 1 Samuel. And the cantor is going to recite the blessing introducing the reading. And then the reading will be read in English by Sue Nevins. And I understand that she's going to share the reading with her daughter Stacy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'neviim tovim, v'ratza v'divreihem, en amarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, הבוחר בתורה, ובמשה עבדו, ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי האמת בצדק.
There was a man from Ramatayim, a Zuphite from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Yeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and he had two wives, one named Hannah and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. This man used to go up from his town annually to worship and to offer sacrifice to the God of heaven's hosts in Shiloh. There, Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Eternal One. When Elkanah offered a sacrifice, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to each of her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a special portion, for it was Hannah he loved. But the Eternal One had shut her womb. Her rival would torment her constantly because the Eternal One had shut her womb. This went on year by year. When they went up to the house of the Eternal One, her rival would so torment her that she would weep and not eat. Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why don't you eat? Why are you so unhappy? Am I not dearer to you than 10 sons? Once Hannah rose up after eating and drinking. It was in Shiloh, and Eli was sitting near the entrance of the temple of the Eternal One. In bitter grief, she prayed to the Eternal One, weeping bitterly. She took a vow saying, Eternal God, if you take notice of your servant's affliction, if you keep me in mind and do not forget your maidservant, giving your maidservant a son, I will dedicate him to you for life, and no razor shall touch his head.
As she continued to pray before the Eternal One, Eli was observing her lips. Hannah was talking to herself. Through her lips, though her lips were moving, she had made no sound, so that Eli took her for a drunkard. Eli said to her, How long do you propose to carry on drunk like this? Get rid of your wine. Not so, my lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman distressed in spirit. I have had neither wine nor beer, but have been pouring out my soul before the Eternal One. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. All this time, I have been speaking out of my abundant sorrow and torment. Then Eli replied, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your request. May your maidservant find favor in your sight, she said. So the woman went on her way. She ate and was downcast no longer. Early in the morning, they arose, prostrated themselves before the Eternal One, and returned to their home in Ramah. Elkanah knew his wife, and the Eternal One remembered her. At the turn of the year, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son, whom she named Samuel, saying, I asked him of the Eternal One and was heard. When she had weaned him, she brought him up to a house of the Eternal One at Shiloh, though he was still a child, together with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of meal, and a skin of wine. They slaughtered the bull and brought the lad to Eli. Then she said, Oh, my Lord, I am the woman who stood near you right here praying to the Eternal One. It was for this lad that I prayed, and the Eternal One has granted my request. I therefore dedicate him to the Eternal One. And so long as he lives, he is dedicated to the Eternal One, and they worship the Eternal One there.
Thank you, Rabbi.
The concluding prayer for the Haftorah will be chanted by the cantor. Maybe. Baruch atah Adonai
I apologize. I was muted. We'll try this again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol ha'olamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'nomer ve'oseh, ve'hemadeh, daber u'mekayem, shekol derav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'zikaron hazeh, shenatata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu lechavod u'tifaret, Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umevarchim otach yitbarach shimcha ulfichu chai tamid leolam vaed uvarecha emet vekayam lad Baruch atah Adonai melech al kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael melech al kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael Ve'yom hazikaron.
Thank you, Cantor. Cantor, calling an audible before we begin the sounding of the shofar.
Yes,
I want
sir.
you to please turn back to the Akedah, the binding story. I want to share with you some thoughts about this on Rosh Hashanah. And just as an introduction to everyone, last year, one of my attempts to teach about the binding story, I attempted to teach about a understanding of the story of the binding of Isaac before I had fully understood what was being said. Now, 1 year later, I think I understand it better, if not more fully. And so, in part, my words to you today are a mea culpa, but also a new understanding of the binding of the story, a binding story of Isaac, that I think, at least for me, provides a new understanding of the significance of the story. And I offer this as a way of affirming, in some ways, the importance of what we understand as the traditional understanding of the story. The story of the binding of Isaac takes an important place in Jewish liturgy. For those who don't frequent synagogue too often, they encounter this story, and I think it must create quite a bit of concern. I had one rabbinic colleague said, people come to synagogue once a year or twice a year, and they hear a story of child abuse. Why would they want to come back? So people hear the story. It's a profound story. And of course, they do not hear the story of the profound Haftorah that we just heard. I want to suggest to you that this story is more than just teaching the end of child sacrifice. That story remains, I think, one of the key elements of this story. It reminds us that the story invites us into a new time of hope that is inaugurated by a new year, as encapsulated by the reprieve that Isaac receives and by the new life that Hannah is able to give to a son, Samuel. It is a story that's read not only on Rosh Hashanah, but those of you that own a traditional prayer book will notice that it is also read every day of the year in the morning service. So obviously this must be a fairly significant part of our tradition. Of course, it's read during the normal readings during the year, which is this year sometime in October. The key thing that I think the rabbis focused on was not what we moderns focus on. The key thing that they focused on, and if we can turn towards the next page of the story, they focused on what happens later in the story when at the very end, the angel of the Eternal called to Abraham out of the heaven a second time and said. And then what follows, and this was, I think, what was the focus for generations, that Abraham, having been willing to go as far as he did, had received not only a reprieve for his son Isaac, but had received a crowning oath from God that what he had done would be of merit for all generations. And it says, "By myself do I swear," says the Eternal One, "that because you have done this and did not withhold your son, your precious one, from me, I will bless you greatly and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of the heaven and the sands of the seashore, and your descendants shall come to possess the gates of your enemies. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed through your descendants, because you have obeyed my commandment." So thus, at the end of the, I think was what was the traditional understanding, Isaac lives, Abraham returns to Sarah, and we'll leave what happens for another time. And this powerful blessing is extracted from the divine, in a sense, a repetition of what was an unknown blessing or an unverified blessing in chapter 12, the beginning of Abraham's career. So, as many of you know, this Torah portion has a misnomer. It is called in Christian Bibles the sacrifice of Isaac. And by that mislabeling, it suggests a whole different theological direction. Abraham doesn't sacrifice Isaac. In fact, the strongest portion of what we read is that in the last minute, the Eternal One sends an angel. And I want you to notice that it is an angel that comes twice. In the paragraph above the one we saw, it says that the angel of the Eternal One called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." And then for the second time, the angel of the Eternal One called to Abraham out of the heaven a second time and said. And this leads to what I think was my confusion last year, and one of the things that I hope to clarify, at least in terms of how the traditional commentators, which often didn't agree with the understanding of the folk understanding, understood this verse. At the beginning of this chapter, God is referred to as Elohim. Elohim, in the understanding of the rabbis, is a lower, less elevated form of understanding the divine. And the fact that it is Adonai, Yud-He, Vav-He, that is the messenger that sends the messenger to Abraham twice, suggests to Maimonides and to other commentators something that is for us a radical way of thinking, and that is that God in this story is unfolding what Abraham needs to comprehend. And that is that Abraham begins with one understanding. He's going to go and take Isaac to Moriah. He's going to offer him there as an olah, as a burnt offering. But as he comes to the place where he's supposed to do this, this is short-circuited by the arrival of the messenger. Now, the word messenger and the word angel are actually synonyms in Hebrew. And this leads modern commentators, and this is where I want us to appreciate an important part of this view of how I now understand this. Who is the messenger that Yud-He Vav-He, the Eternal One, is sending? And I would argue that at the moment when Abraham is about to put the knife to his son, he sees the face of Isaac. And in the world of Levinasian philosophy, I'm referring here to a Jewish philosopher by the name of Levinas, who is one of the founding fathers of a whole school of philosophy. Human ethics begins in the moment when we see the face of the other, and that in seeing the face of the other, we have one commandment that emerges: do not kill me. So that it is in that moment when the messenger, the face of Isaac, is comprehended, when Abraham has to comprehend that Isaac cannot be an instrument of his salvation. Abraham can fulfill his responsibilities to God, his sense of obligation, and he does. He offers a ram. There's nowhere in this passage that says that he should offer a ram, but he comes to a new understanding, and that is that no human being can be the instrument for another human being's desire to achieve salvation. This is a way of talking about something that is very much on the minds of people today. Beginning in the 1840s with a man by the name of Kierkegaard, he presented in an essay that is seminal to religious thinkers, both Jewish and Christian, the idea that Abraham is involved in an act of the teleological suspension of the ethical. That's a mouthful that simply says that because he's heard God's voice, he is no longer bound by the ethical. This is disturbing. If I've heard God's voice, can I fly a plane into a building? If I've heard God's voice, can I refuse a vaccination? If I've heard God's voice, can I act in any number of ways that we have seen unleashed in our society that simply says, I have no connection to the responsibility because I have heard God's voice? And so this Torah portion, which simply has stood waiting for us to contemplate anew its meaning, has not only a significance in terms of Abraham and Isaac and the future of the Jewish people and the possibility of our being connected to the possibility of being blessed and our descendants being a blessing throughout the world. But this Torah portion has, if you will, an imperative for our own time. The teleological suspension of the ethical, the idea that somehow once one has heard the voice of God, and we can therefore trample the personhood of other people, is one of the issues that is at the center of a classic problem, especially in the modern world. By the way, Kierkegaard was not advocating for the teleological suspension of the ethical. He was simply pointing to the problem and making it crystal clear by writing the essay Fear and Trembling, which I recommend to you. It was in reading the book by Aaron Kohler, Isaac Unbound, that I came to this realization. And it was this desire to share the understanding that on two grounds, the Levinasian view, which argues that Abraham comes to understand his responsibility to his son and to the responsibility of understanding the higher meaning of his experience with God, which cannot be achieved at the expense of Isaac or any other person. That Isaac is a full-fledged individual with an identity and personality of his own, and Abraham is not commanded to kill him. It is actually Maimonides that is the inspiration for Emmanuel Levinas's thinking. And that's what I was trying to articulate last year when I spoke to you about Maimonides' various levels of prophecy. I'll save you the analysis of his prophecy, but to repeat what I believe is the core significance of this reading this year, and I believe significantly for our time, and that is that it is impossible to fulfill our religious and ethical responsibilities through the harm of another. May this year of more stress and more significance in terms of the ethical and the covenanted complexity that we all face as one human community remind us that we cannot be safe alone, that in so many areas we are interconnected, and that our salvation, our health, our humanity is interconnected with the health and salvation of so many others. May this be a year where we discover that again. Amen.
Amen.
We turn now to our service and the sounding of the shofar. We are running a little late. We got a little bit of a late start this morning. Normally we would have a talk back, but I believe we should conclude our service. And if I've angered or confused you, I invite you to stay longer for the talk back after we've heard the sounding of the shofar. This part of the service invites us to hear the three themes of Rosh Hashanah: the notion of God's sovereignty, the notion that collectively we are connected to God's memory, and that there is a future that is sounded at the connection of history between Sinai and the end of time, and is sounded throughout our lives, calling us to awaken and be connected to the sound of this instrument.
ובחודש השביעי באחד לחודש, מקרא קודש יהיה לכם, כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו, יום תרועה יהיה לכם.
Hear the shofar acclaim the world's creation, and now recall Isaac's awesome trial. Hear the shofar, you who stand at Sinai, and now proclaim the rule of Israel's God. Hear now the call and turn in true repentance, and now affirm the triumph of good. We are made in the divine image. We are the house of Israel, a kingdom of priests, a holy people. Know then the sound, discover its meaning. The first prayer is the Aleinu, familiar to us as the moment just before the cookies and the tea is broken out, but in its original position, it is the prayer in the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur service, and it is the one single piece besides the call to worship, the Baruch Hu, which has survived and is part of ancient liturgy announcing God's sovereignty. Please rise.
Aleinu leshabeach la'adon akol לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We must praise the God of all, the maker of all heaven and earth, who has set us apart from the other nations and families of earth, giving us a destiny unique among the nations. We therefore bow in awe and thanksgiving before the one who is sovereign over all, the Holy One and Blessed One. Let all who dwell on earth acknowledge that unto you every knee must bend, every tongue swear loyalty. Before you, eternal God, let them humble themselves to your glorious name. Let them give honor, let all accept the yoke of your sovereign rule, that you may reign over them soon and forever. For you are sovereign, and to all eternity you will reign forever. We turn to the next page, on page 141. Our God and God of our ancestors, may you rule in glory over all the earth. Let your grandeur be acclaimed throughout the world. Reveal the splendor of your majesty to all who dwell on earth, and all your works may know you as their maker, and all the living acknowledge you as their creator. Then all who breathe shall say, the sovereign God of Israel is the one whose dominion extends over all creation. Blessed is the sovereign God of all the earth, who hallows the house of Israel and the day of remembrance. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav וציוונו לשמוע קול שופר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. תקיע שברים תרועה תקיע תקיע שברים תקיע תקיע תרועה תקיע היום הרת עולם, היום ימיד במשפט, כל יצורי עולמים, כל יצורי עולמים, עם כבנים, עם כבדים, כבדים, עם כבנים רחמנו כרחמיו על בנים, על בנים, עם כבדים עינינו לך תלויות, עד שתחתנו וצוציך אור משפטנו, היום קדוש. הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך אל רם ונישא, הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך אל רם ונישא, מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו, ותקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון סדר, סדר מלכויותינו.
אתה זוכר מעשי עולם ופוקד כל יצורי קדם. You remember the work of creation, you are mindful of all you have made. You unravel every mystery, all secret things are known to you, for there is no forgetfulness in your presence, nothing hidden from your sight. You remember every deed, you know every doer. All things past and present are known to you, eternal God, and every person's act are remembered and judged. This you made known from the beginning. This you revealed from of old. This is the day of the world's beginning. Now we recall creation's first day. On this day, the fate of nations is in the balance, for war or peace, for famine or plenty. So too, with every single creature, life and death are in the balance. Every mortal's record is set before you, our acts and our schemes, our thoughts and desires. The Torah proclaims God heard the enslaved people's groaning and remembered the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The psalmist affirms, you remembered your covenant with us. In your great love, you comforted us. The prophets declared, I will remember the covenant I made with you in the days of your youth, and I will establish you in an everlasting covenant. As it is written in the Torah, I will remember the covenant with their ancestors whom I led out of Egypt in the sight of the nations, to be their God. I am the Eternal. Eloheinu v'lehavotenu zochrenu v'zikaron tov lefanecha ufoktenu v'ftukat Yeshua v'rachamim u'mishmei shmei kedem zchor lanu et Adonai Eloheinu et habrit v'et hachesed v'et hashvua asher nishbata la'Avraham Avinu b'har Moriah. Our God and God of all generations, remember us with favor and grant us your compassionate deliverance. Remember your love for us, the covenant you made with Abraham on Mount Moriah. Remember his boundless love for you, his willingness to offer you all that was his. Show us your compassion then, and in your goodness look with favor upon your people and your loved ones, for you are the one who remembers all that has been forgotten. There is no forgetfulness in your presence. Blessed is the Eternal One who remembers the covenant. Please rise.
Tekiah. Rabbi, I'm sorry, your camera seems to have fallen off. I'm not sure if you're aware that your video is off.
How's that?
Let's see. We'll take it again here. Tekiah. Shvarim Torua. Tekiah. Shvarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Teruah. Tekiah. Hayom harat olam, hayom yamid b'mishpat, kol yitzurei olamim, kol yitzurei olamim, im kavadim, im kavadim, im kavanim rachamenu kerachemav, al banim, al banim, im kavadim enenu lachatelu עד שתחתנו ותוצאנו משפטנו היום קדוש. ארשת שפתנו יערב לפניך אל רם ונישא. ארשת שפתנו יערב לפניך אל רם ונישא. מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו, ותקבל ברחמים וברצון, סדר זיכרונותינו.
We turn now to the third theme of Rosh Hashanah, Shofarot, the notion that we have received a revelation that was announced with the sounding of the shofar, that the shofar is sounded when our hearts respond to that sound, when it invites us to improve our lives and to direct our actions to improve the welfare of our fellow human beings. I quote the slogan of the Musar movement. This was a movement in Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Eastern Europe, led by a man by the name of Yisrael Slanter, who's the founder of the Musar movement, who said, The material needs of your neighbor are your spiritual responsibility. And in the sounding of the shofar, we're reminded of that act of compassion as central to our lives. The Torah proclaims, as the third day dawned at Sinai, there was thunder and lightning, a dense cloud over the mountain, and a loud blast of the shofar. The people trembled. The psalmist affirms God stands revealed and acclaimed, the Eternal One amid the sound of the shofar. The prophet declares, all you who dwell on earth, who inhabit the earth, when a banner is raised, take note, and when the shofar is sounded, take heed. As it is written, the Eternal will appear. God's arrow will flash like lightning. The Eternal God will cause the shofar to be sounded and stride forth with the storm winds of the south. Thus, O God, will you shield your people with peace. The Torah proclaims, we turn to Baruch Atah Adonai, Shomea Kol Truat Amo Yisrael. Our God and God of all generations, sound the great shofar to proclaim our freedom. Raise the banner for the redemption of the oppressed. Signal liberty for all who are in exile. Bring lasting joy to Zion and Jerusalem, your holy city. We praise you, the merciful God, who hearkens to the sound of the shofar. We rise for the third sounding of the shofar.
Tekiah. Tekiah. Shevarim Teruah. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shevarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Teruah. Tekiah Gadola. Yasha Koach. Hayom harat olam, Hayom yamid b'mishpat, Kol yitzurei olamim, Kol yitzurei olamim, Im kebanim, im kavadim, Im kvanim rachamenu karachemav al banim, al banim, im kevadim enenu lachateluyot, ad shechatenu v'tzotziachol mishpatenu, ayom kadosh. Areshet sifatenu yerev lefanecha el ram v'nisa. Areshet sifatenu yerev lefanecha el ram v'nisa. מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו, ותקבל ברחמים ברחמים וברצון סדר סדר שופרונותינו.
Thank you, Cantor, for calling the shots, so to speak, during the shofar service. I understand that the camera kept moving in and out. We return the Torah to the Ark, and that's found in front of us.
יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו, הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירים קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו, הללויה, הללויה, כי לך טוב נתתי לכם, תורתי אל תעזובו, את חיימכי למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר, דרכיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיך שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Thank you, Cantor, for returning the Torah to the Ark. And we are drawing near to the conclusion of our service. I'd like to invite everyone who would like to share with us the names of people for whom they're reciting Kaddish to do so at this time in the chat box. We will recite their names at this time just before we begin the Kaddish.
Rabbi, might I make a short general memory for the Kaddish?
Sure.
I'd like to, in memory of all those of the Jewish communities of Beliak and Brno, Czech Republic, who perished during the most terrible events of World War II. We remember them through prayers, sharing their Torah, from which Torah scroll they themselves prayed those many years ago. Thank you.
Amen.
Alan, I think you need to expand a little more because recently we've been in touch with the Czech communities that are responsible for that community. There's not a community now, but say a little more, please.
The Torah scroll that we have from the Czech Republic on loan to us was the Torah scroll of a community that perished during World War II, and Beliak, and as well the neighboring larger community of Brno, who is now involved, the caretaker. And by sharing that Torah scroll of those who perished, I wish that we remember them and remember that they themselves read from that Torah scroll, and that we reflect on that during this very special day of the year.
Thank you.
Amen.
We have one other yortzeit that we want to sing aloud at this moment, and that is yesterday we showed everyone a challah cover that was created by our Claudia, Claudia Koner. I don't know if it's possible to see her in our cantor, if you can find her. And she's our newest board member. And she created this beautiful, there she is. Hi, Claudia. Thank you for creating this memory. And she used it last night to remember Justice Ginsburg. And it says on it, in commemoration of the passage from Deuteronomy, it changes the passage slightly. Tzedek, tzedek, radfa, justice, justice, she pursued. And I've been following her, and I wanted to say something about the creation of this, because there's some special features that Claudia, you need to share with us.
I mean, why I chose the colors and lace and so on?
Yes.
So it's meant to evoke the look that Justice Ginsburg brought to the Supreme Court robe. She usually wore a collar, and I think often a white lace collar. So I meant to convey that. And the, okay.
Go ahead.
And the changing of the passage, as you say, it was to, as a tribute to her for what she devoted her life to.
So her Yortzeit falls just 3 days short of Rosh Hashanah. So very appropriate that on our first Yortzeit we celebrate and commemorate her memory. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
We have other names of people that we're remembering today. That includes Bob Beliak, Leo Beliak, Paul Silver, Richard Lindheim, Yaakov ben Sarah Avraham, and there are other names that, we now rise to recite the Kaddish. Yes. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba v'yalma divra chirotei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'mechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agalav zman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam v'mei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata damiram b'yoma imru Amen. Yehei shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Osei shalom b'mroma hu ya'asei shalom aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens make peace for all who mourn, and let us say Amen. We return to gallery view, and I want to turn to our president before I just recite a few acknowledgements. One to the congregation for the beautiful flowers, which are over my shoulder. They do add a sense of festiveness to our home, and I'm glad that we have them. And Claudia brought them yesterday, and we've enjoyed them. Thank you for that. Also want to thank Cantor Andrew Henry for his tremendous efforts in putting together this service. All those who participated, especially Gila Nissan and Stacy and Sue. And as always, our president, who very active, especially before the service, in fielding calls from people who are inquiring and from the rabbi who was crazy and so forth. And I turn to her now to make a few announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your words to me. Thank you for your words to all of us, which were really, really important, particularly to me right now, at this moment in my life. And they're much appreciated. I want to also acknowledge our board of directors, who, we've fished through meetings trying to figure out what to do and then what else to do when the thing we wanted to do, which was to be live, couldn't happen. So I want to acknowledge, in order of appearance on my screen, Sue and Joel Nevins, Alan Hyman, my husband, Sherry Paul, our treasurer, Paula, you will see Barmaper, and Jeff Werner and Elise Wakerman, who on my screen at least are next to them, to Polly, and our newest member, welcome, Claudia Kohner, who has already made herself useful, both in presenting that beautiful image we were just looking at and in her help developing, thinking about and beginning to develop programming for the year. And let me lead right into that with Sue Nevins. Can you give us a rundown of a few of the things we're thinking about doing and working on for this year for our Friday night services?
Yes, I would be happy to do that. We are going to be planning some special programs this coming year, and we hope that you will all join one or more or all of them. One of them is going to be further information and discussion on the Czech Torah, which Alan was just talking to you about. We have that Torah on loan for the life of our congregation, and the Memorial Scrolls Trust, which is based in London, has been dedicated to the survival of over 1,000 scrolls all over the United States and all over the world. When the Nazis started taking over Jewish businesses and property amidst their decrees, congregations were forced to close. We will learn more about Jewish life in the area that the Torah is believed to be from and where the Torah was taken before it was turned over to our care. Now we have this direct communication with this adjacent congregation, and we will also have, the help of the Memorial Trust in preparing this program. The second one, is called Judaism in the Pandemic. There's a famous Yiddish writer, Haim. In a 1953 story, he referred to the hidden inheritance of our people's strength. Congregation Beth Ohr is planning a program led by Rabbi Beliak to address how our inheritance and certain tenets of Judaism can continue to serve as a helpful function in coping with the serious challenges we face, like the coronavirus pandemic. The program will include presentation of relevant historical and spiritual aspects of Judaism, followed by group reflection and discussion. The third one is a continuation of something that was very successful for us last year in looking at Jewish-themed TV programs and films. In the past, we have had fascinating discussions about the TV miniseries such as The Plot Against America, which is based on the novel by Philip Roth. And we've also been discussing the Israeli production of the TV series Shtisel. We look forward to these get-togethers, and we gain valuable insight into the background of the themes that are portrayed in these shows. So it makes for very fun evenings, and I hope that you will all join us.
Karen, you're muted.
So either Karen or I get to talk. Karen?
Okay, here I am. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So the only other thing I want to say now is to remind you about next week's Yom Kippur services, starting with Kol Nidre next Wednesday evening at 7:30. And we will have the Kol Nidre sung by our cantor, and we will have the Kol Nidre melody played as she does every year on the viola by well-known violist Novi Novak. And that's a special thing. So hope you will all join us. If somehow, how could it be that you have not yet reserved? Let me know this week, okay? And you know, there is time to send checks. There is more than enough time to send money electronically, which I love, because then I don't have to go anywhere. So we'll see you next week. Oh, yes.
Karen? Yeah.
Yes.
We do want to add,
Go ahead.
we do want to ask people to please remember to send in the names for any names that they want to be recited during Yizkor. And we really need that in the next couple days. Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say something similar. And also for those of you who are needing to reenact some very important rituals, this Friday at 3:30 at the Venice Pier, we're going to be bringing all kinds of bread to join together for Tashlich. And meet you at the pier, and we'll have an opportunity to do Tashlich. And we look forward to having you participate in that ceremony.
What time?
3:30. I put it in the chat, and I don't know how many people are coming, but I'm always excited to see people show up, and we see people in person. Those of you who do show up are going to have the surprise of your life, but I can't tell you what the surprise is. But there's a box of little jars that we intended to distribute for Rosh Hashanah last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you will receive one of those, and you will be so happy. I'm telling you. So, Cantor, there is a profound song that we conclude our services with. That is All the World, which is a classic song that is sung at the conclusion of the Rosh Hashanah service.
All the world shall come to serve you and to bless your glorious name, and your righteousness triumphant the island shall proclaim. And the people shall go seeking who knew you not before, and the ends of earth shall praise you and tell your greatness o'er. They shall build for you their altars, their idols overthrown, and their graven gods shall shame them as they turn to you alone. They shall worship you at sunrise and feel your sovereign might, and impart their understanding to those astray in night. With the coming of your victory, the hills shall shout with song, and the islands laugh exultant that they to God belong. and through all your congregations so loud your praise shall ring, that the utmost peoples hearing shall then your greatness sing.
Thank you. Thank you, Cantor. That's a wonderful song. The melody is, of course, from East London, and the translation is as well, but the Hebrew is a very traditional song. I want to wish everybody a happy, healthy new year. And there are people who have a little koyach. Let's stay around and chat a bit if you